Honorable Adongo Ababe Éxp0sé NPP and Mensah Bonsu 200 million Suame Interchange sika omo ewia ede ahye omo botom abusua Suame Interchange endrechi Suame for etisi abonten a chese na omo ye oyekire kese a omo se emfuturo ene road na omo mambe ye no omo akọ strong demonstration editia aban no ema Ashanti Regional Minister ho edi nsem bi ekoto dwa na sa Suame Interchange during NPP time Akufo-Addo shebo se ansa na obefree power no na wa complete Suame Interchange na 200 million omo de share sa Interchange no abutua sa sika ni na according to Honorable Adongo no NPP for area sika ede ashe omo botom na sa 200 million no sika no omo approve no parliament na Mensah Bonsu ete ase ono a ne constituency no wahwe ama NPP for ede omo nsa abosa sika no ama sa project no bepem ne eda so ewo ho 200 million Ghana cedis ebusua enye asamketo akra mama yakona yenkonkotie Honorable Adongo nensema auditu dwa se Honorable Mensah Bonsu na elidi ya NPP for edisa sika no ahye omobotom 200 million abusua na ono ankasa ne constituency kra no wahwe ama NPP for edisika no ahye omobotom abusua mama yakona yenkonkotie on subscribe na hit on the notification bell so never any update be ever dropping on so onsa to me akabi medamase
Ghana to meet these obligations without
which of them?
I mean in terms of we have issues of significant external debt servicing obligation.
Yes.
I mean this took us so many years.
Yes.
Now the problem here is that you have 14 million sitting down.
Billion
dollars, sorry,
yes.
I beg your pardon.
But that's not government. It's not government of Ghana.
Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
They are telling you that the country still needs a lot of cushioning. You are reserving such monies. And
that money cannot be used to cushion the economy. Please. I have told you that monetary dominance is illegal. So money sitting at the central bank is not a place that the government should even be looking, because it is not for you. It is to manage external shocks. If we hadn't done that, and oil prices shoot up because of Iran war, and we require a lot of dollars to buy oil, where are we going to get it from?
So you're putting it as a reserve for some of these emergencies.
To manage external vulnerability. The word is vulnerability. To build resilience through buffers.
Okay.
And these people didn't know that. They threw all the buffers to the extent that at the time we're going to IMF. Do you know that even IMF, when they are coming to your country, they assess your credit worthiness in terms of how much they have lent you already. And you know, their measure is a stringent measure. It is how much is outstanding of their your obligations to them as a percentage of your net international reserves. And the threshold is that you must be able to finance those loans with about 18%. We're doing 123%. In other words, we did not even qualify in terms of the IMF's own measure of our credit worthiness to IMF itself.
Okay.
And IMF simply said that they found a caveat and said, Ghana has a track record of paying its debt over the years to the IMF. As a result, even though we see that our reserve position is dire, we believe that we can go by the historical performance of the country. So they were not judging us by Akufo-Addo Bawumia. They were judging us by the track record of President Kufuor, the track record of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama I, the track record of Professor Mills, Jerry John Rawlings. That was the standard they were judging us. If it was left with the government at the time, we didn't qualify, even per the IMF's own assessment of our risk exposure to IMF itself. The IMF could not believe that we didn't have enough dollars to pay them the debt that we owed. This is the situation that we're in. Today, what do we see? Today, they are complaining that we have resolved that problem, we have built enough buffers, and Ghana is resilient. Ghana is resilient fiscally because we have been disciplined, and all our fundamentals in the fiscal environment can even deteriorate up to a certain percentage, and we'll still cope with it. Our reserve can match a certain number of years. Right now, what we need to do, and which we are doing, is to find alternative sources of getting fuel into our country. But in the case of Ghana, you also remember that even now, when the problem came, we already have a reserve that could last about 5 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Imagine we didn't have that. What do you think would have happened to us?
Honorable,
So the two regimes are completely different. It is a teacher and a lecturer situation.
So with all these, I mean, with this brighter outlook you have actually painted, why is government struggling to implement the 24-hour economy? Because there's no money.
The 24-hour economy is not about money. It's about getting the policy framework right. You see, you can't have a budget line called 24-hour economy, because in agriculture and agribusiness, you expect to leverage a mainstream 24-hour economy. In hospitality and tourism, you expect to mainstream 24-hour economy. In infrastructure development, you expect to mainstream. So the cost of putting together 24-hour economy sits on the budget of several ministries and departments. Do you get the point? And that is why we had to set up the 24-hour authority that will provide an enabling environment to coordinate all these activities and make sure that we deliver it. So the planning phase is gone now. We went ahead to now set up an authority. That authority, when it is fully staffed, will now begin the process to coordinate activities in 24-hour economy. It has nothing to do with IMF. We are doing a big push of 50 billion. Does that sound like Ghana? Without external borrowing.
Yes.
Do you know, let me tell you something. Ghanaians don't know. Suame Interchange. I was shocked that they had a press conference. They took part of our Euro bonds in 2020. $200 million of that money was approved by Parliament to be used to do the Suame Interchange and the ancillary roads.
$200 million.
I remember very well, Honorable Mensah Bonsu was sitting there, and he was under siege from his constituency. In fact, one time he went to visit the site, and they nearly lynched him. You remember that?
Yeah,
so we all were together and said that, look, we can't have our leader humiliated like that. So we would approve the $200 million. Go and do the Suame Interchange. They chop the money. Suame Interchange is still there, and they are holding press conferences about Suame Interchange. How shameful can they be? 2, Ofankor and Sawam Road, the same World Bank money. They took $200 million to do that project. They chopped the money, left the contractor. It took Honorable Abuja and Honorable Atto to raise the money to give to them. Are they now not closer to completion? Where is the $200 million Euro bonds that they took to do those projects? So, but we are doing 60 billion. $200 million is about how much? That's about 2 billion. Plus 2 billion, 4 billion, they couldn't do it. We are doing 50 billion without borrowing from anybody. Does that tell you that we're a serious group of people? We are doing 50 billion, and the whole country, like His Excellency said, has been turned into a construction site.
Yes, but in recent times, we had the finance minister talking about, borrowing to pay salaries, and it became a huge topic for people on social media and even some traditional radio stations. Can you explain that to us better?
So
how, government is, with all these things you are mentioning, is borrowing to pay salaries?
So it's a cash flow problem. You budget to spend on compensation, interest payments and debt service, to spend on goods and services, and to spend on capital expenditure. Okay. The monies that are approved by Parliament in the budget is expected to be generated from the revenue sources,
Yeah.
your taxes and other sources. Those monies don't arrive one day.
Yes. Yes.
Do you get the point? Meanwhile, you must start meeting those obligations from day one of the year. So it's a cash flow problem. But then you also have to understand that when we took over this country, one of the biggest fiscal risk that was staring us in the face was the percentage of our revenue that we were spending on compensation. They left an economy where you were spending over 50% of your revenue on compensation. Of 600,000 workers, we're taking over 50% of your tax revenue. Then you have to also pay debt service, which is accounting for just almost about 20 to 30% of your tax revenue. Then you have to pay for goods and services and capex. So it becomes very clear that the money that you get after you have met these obligations, basically it becomes difficult to have money left to do anything. If the monies were to come in bulk, then you could have prioritized based on the needs of the country. So in the meantime, because the budget itself has a deficit, what is the deficit for? The deficit must be financed. It tells you that you must borrow, but this time only domestically to finance the budget. So in the meantime, if you are not getting the revenues that you need to pay salaries now, and you have gone to borrow, do you grind the bureaucracy to a standstill? You must accommodate it from your current cash flows. But it doesn't mean that you were borrowing to pay salaries because you are not generating enough. It simply means that there's a time lag within which you can generate those revenues and within which you must pay those obligations. Are workers not paid from January? From January, do you get all the revenues that you are expecting for the year?
Not possible.
So in that January, what would you do?
You have to tap from somewhere.
Exactly. So it's a cash flow management. But cumulatively, when we end the year, you will see that we have not gone beyond the deficit financing arrangement that was approved by Parliament. And we have not gone beyond the appropriations bill that was approved by Parliament, which became a law. That is how you measure the management of the economy.
Okay. So in this current state, let's talk about the banking sector a bit. There was a time we heard about, banks that were collapsed. Some of them, their licenses were being restored. Is there anything realistic? Because we've not seen any formal communication talking about restoration of banks that were closed down, those who are waiting now, whether their licenses are being restored. Like we heard from, like the GN Bank, for example. We heard from social media and other portals how these banks were being restored.
To be honest with you, there's a lot of fake news. I sit on the board of Bank of Ghana. I am not aware of a proposal to the board to restore the license of any bank. Do you understand?
And these banks have not approved the Bank of Ghana?
You see, His Excellency's commitment was that banks that were unjustifiably taken, he didn't say he will restore licenses of banks. He said he will restore licenses of banks that were unjustifiably taken. That is a process that requires a judicial interpretation, a pronouncement from the court that an injustice has been done to a particular bank. In the absence of that pronouncement by a court, what is the basis for coming to the conclusion that the bank was unjustifiably taken? Are you getting the point? So it is not that His Excellency is reneging on that promise, but that promise has not become tenable yet. None of the banks that were collapsed have succeeded in the law court, proving to the court that their banks were unjustifiably taken, and for which reason they can now trigger a process of restoration of the license. I hope you understand me. But the important thing is that, did we need to collapse them? NIB was sitting on a whole of 2 billion Ghana cedis. But by dint of what we call regulatory forbearance, the central bank deciding to temper justice with mercy, that bank survived almost 8 years with such a huge deficit in their capital base. It took his Excellency John Dramani Mahama and Addo to turn NIB into one of the most capitalized banks, having already taken steps that has injected close to 2 billion into the bank. What it simply means is that some of them, if they were given the same treatment, would have survived. Is that not it? Yeah. So why was the rush? And I've heard people say, oh, the banks were not collapsed by the government. No central bank can collapse a financial institution that has an implication on the fiscal. It is the government that is going to pay for it without consulting the government. As a matter of fact, the Minister for Finance was required to present a case in cabinet for approval by the government to fund the collapse of the financial institutions. And Ken Ofrata did that. So if you were an undertaker that said, go and collapse them, I'll find money to pay, who collapsed them? So that's where we are. But the important thing is that the managers of this economy, and I've seen a lot of attempts to try and brand this government. It won't work. It won't work. I heard a colleague of mine who's a lawyer sent me a video where they were saying that what do you call it? The Registrar General, has blocked a portal where you can go and find out the identities and the ownership of certain institutions that were contracted to do big push. Every lawyer knows that in this country, we have Right to Information Act.
Yeah.
Which is mandatory on every institution once you meet the requirement to provide the information. You don't seek information such as who owns a company on a portal. You do that by triggering a right information request. And they will be obliged to provide. Otherwise, they will suffer sanctions. And this is a lawyer. This is a lawyer. But you know what? It is not because he doesn't know. All they want to do is to pollute the unsuspecting public, to think that something untoward is happening. Right to the Registrar General. Look, you remember when they set up GATS and took some banks. I wrote to the Registrar General, even though they hid files. Once I made the request, they gave me all the information. That's how I got to know that Ghana Amalgamated Trust was owned by the National Trust Holding Company as a nominee shareholder. And that the initial shareholders include Charles Edubuain and Samson Akelko. Well, how did I know that? Did I go to their portal? How did I know that there was a bank in Ghana which was 99% owned by somebody with 1% owned by his wife? And yet that bank survived. And my own brother, Seydou Agongo, who owned only 70%, they said that he was overexposed to the bank. And that 70% created what the lawyers call, they have some funny terms, to suggest that 70% was too much and that he needed to have given some to some people. Meanwhile, somebody was owing 99% of a bank with 1% owned by his wife. That's actually 100% owned by one person, one family. And that bank survived. So I didn't do that by going to a portal. I wrote to the Registrar General to request information about the ownership of those financial institutions. And I'm not a lawyer.
All right, well, we have less than 30 minutes, and then I want us to talk about jobs.
Yes.
With all these beautiful, pictures that you have shown us, in terms of job creation, especially your grassroots are still very much living that a year on, you've not been able to provide the needed jobs that they were looking up to. What's the problem?
So I really sympathize with our grassroots and our colleagues. It is a very difficult situation because, when you fight to get something, it is because there's something in it for everybody. But then, as I've said, that economy that we inherited initially could not support a lot of the things that you need to do. The private sector was in shambles. Exchange rate was all over the place. They couldn't get, enough forex to expand their businesses. Interest rates were so high, they could not raise more money to expand their business and employ people. The government itself needed to be very disciplined in terms of its expenditure. And so financial clearance for certain institutions to recruit people which are Ghanaians and could also benefit our grassroots.
When it ends a course or political highway. So Honorable Adongo and I saying say or this and some no tuja at the Amaya any asam Kitwakra or say a yes a big push press conference NPP for a no no crampuno a very shocked and Omocran deserve say a say yes a press conference. But I must say some of J Peneko and some no at my aha a gossip politics TV so but I must say.